here, I wanted to share. I saw this on the IT Reddit. I had Active Directory open. I accidentally delete some random user when I was selected in another window. So I have someone that can't log in. I'll fix it when I know who it is. And it's that whole like limit the blast radius. All right, if you have Active Directory open and you're an admin and you can delete people, be very careful about this. I'm sure we've all made mistakes about dangerous things in production before. I mean, you have to learn somehow.
I've done Git surgery before.
I don't think I've deleted too much. I have written too much.
I've written a script that spent too much.
58.
Yes. Right? In AWS, that's easy enough to do.
Well, Rahul and I, we didn't get to it. There's a new one for service quotas on AMIs, and it called that out specifically. It says it's really easy to write a script that will generate 10,000 AMIs. And so now you can service quota your account to not do that because you probably don't want to. Right.
We've actually written a Lambda and then set that to CloudWatch events that then goes and checks the status of like workspaces and validates that if there hasn't been any activity, shut it down.
That's what we do at DevGraph. There's in the whole company as a whole, they had about 40,000 AWS accounts under management. And so they've got some pretty neat tools for automatic garbage collecting and checking to see what resources are actually used. Because it'd be really easy. And imagine that many different resources, all able to spend money, right? But that's another discussion.
Yeah, that's another discussion. One of the things we implemented, and again, I think that something like DevSpaces addresses in a very unique way, is when we were using EC2s or other ways of developing and orchestrating compute, how do you start then tracking the cost impact? And so we then had to come up with mechanisms to enforce tagging so that when we looked in, we're a big AWS house, when you look at AWS Cost Explorer, that you can then start getting meaningful analytics on not only the individual, but the client or the project that is driving a particular cost trend that you see in your account. And I think, that kind of overhead, you don't have to really think about as much when you're doing sort of these ephemeral stated dev activities.
I love the analogy we call cattle, not pets, where it's like you don't want to babysit these environments and keep them around a long time. You just want to you like the idea of the environment, right? And you like the process. It's all about the process of how do you get this environment.
Well, one thing about the Git pod is it creates the instance for you and it times out after 30 minutes of activity. So at a lot of places I've worked in the past, they just tell you to spin up an EC2, do your thing, and hope that you remember to turn it off.
That's right.
Yeah, and then you get that angry email at the end where it's like, you left 32x large running over the weekend.
And we would have that. We had data scientists at another company that I worked at, and we gave them enough rights to be dangerous. And in retrospect, that wasn't always the best idea. And told them it was fine to spin up an EC2 and test that experiment. And because they didn't make that connection, you get some data scientists, for example, or it could be any role. I'm not going to pick on data scientists, that they'll go, sure, that R 4x large, or hey, let's test out that new P. Let's run that. And then not knowing to turn that off, you're right, you can drive cost pretty quick. And not having the ability to enforce policies like 30-minute activity shut down, your ephemeral. And in DevSpaces, that's really a nice feature is that your DevSpace may shut down, but it was nice to then be able to go back to my dashboard in DevSpaces and realize I didn't really lose data just because I forgot to git commit or do anything. I still have, as I come to learn from Stephen, 14 days in which I can still spin that space back up, and it has managed and kept the state of what I left it when I let it go and expire at that 30-minute timeout.
So this is what mine looks like to kind of give some visual to what David's saying. So I have all these ones that have timed out, and just different experiments I've run. I want to make an experiment, doesn't pan out, just close that tab and then let it get garbage collected. And then see this one, it'll age for another. This one, Cyan Hyena, I had this one running for a week while I was playing with this thing. But they'll all age out, and then eventually, like, this one's going to get garbage collected in 2 more days, and you don't have to think about it. And all of these, I look at each one of these things, and this is like, oh, this is a time where I didn't have to go back and clean up my environment. Each one of those things. So that, I'm happy about that. Yeah. You see, I've got my Jupyter one running here. My Graph Expert 2, and same thing. I'll just let them time out, and they'll be going. So don't have to worry about that.
David, you use Docker quite a bit more than I think I do. What's the most disk space you've had on your local from all the cached images?
Well, and that's another nice aspect of DevSpaces is I typically will go, and because I'm a bit retentive in this regard, I'll go and do a Docker prune, and which will essentially tree shake out images and other things that aren't being used.
Okay.
But that's not common practice. I think most people don't even know what Docker prune does, and so they'll end up with a significant portion of their drive being consumed by images and more often orphaned images and volumes. And so there's a lot of that management you have to do because they still haven't automated that.
I've seen many like junior data scientists going around, and they have like a terabyte hard drive, and it's at least 600 gigabytes of no longer used Docker.
Yeah, it can really add up. I mean, it's almost worse than video editing. Like, it really can add up.
It's not that bad.